Earlier this morning, a thought entered my mind to talk about something, and I felt like it was a really good topic to talk about, and I completely forgot about it as the day went by. And I was like, man, I should have written it down, because now I've completely forgotten. And as hard as I was trying to remember, I could not remember. So then I just told God, please help me to remember. I feel like it was a good topic to talk about and make a video on. Please help me to remember so that I can talk about it. And literally 2 minutes later, no more than 2 minutes later, I remembered. Even though I was trying so hard, ever since I forgot it this morning till this afternoon, I was trying so hard to remember and couldn't remember. But because I prayed about it, I remembered. Well, because I prayed about it, God caused me to remember. Faith. Without faith, it is impossible to please God well. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Do you know what that is? To be able to please the Almighty? No, seriously, do you know what that is, to be able to please the Almighty? And basically the scripture is telling us that what would cause God to take pleasure in us is if we have faith. So then basically, what quality above all other qualities should we aim to have more than anything else, if not faith? Faith is the number one quality apart from love, but faith basically is the number one quality that a human can express that would please God. And so it starts with faith. So once you have faith, obviously then you would please God. But once you've come to have that, you know, okay, now you've pleased God. Now God is pleased with you. Now God takes pleasure in you. Now God has pleasure in you because you have faith in Him, right? And faith to the point where you know, not just believe, right? Faith to the point where you know. Like, you don't have faith that the phone you're holding is a phone. You know it's a phone, right? You don't believe that the phone you're holding is a phone. You know it's a phone. So once you come to have faith in God to the point of knowledge, knowing, is no longer faith. It's no longer belief. Once you're at that point, you know God has pleasure in you. Okay, good. Now, what's the next step? Obey His commandments. Because if you have faith in the Almighty, but do not obey His commandments, then you're worse than someone who doesn't have faith in the Almighty and disobeys His commandments. It's like a slap in the face. If you have faith in the Almighty and you've come to the point where you know of His existence and yet still fail to keep His commandments, that's worse than someone who doesn't have faith in the Almighty and doesn't keep His commandments. Like, who was it that wrote? Was it James? He said, you have faith? Well done. Even the demons know that God exists, and yet they fear and shudder because they've disobeyed God's commandments, which makes them worse than someone who doesn't have faith, and they know that they are on death row. So the first thing is exercise faith. Christ kept on talking about it. Exercise faith. Above all things, exercise faith. Get your faith in the Almighty to the point where you know of His existence. You don't have a shred of doubt. You know of His existence. After that, keep His commandments. Obey His commandments. When you have faith in the Almighty, you enter. And again, I want to emphasize the faith that I'm talking about. Not just faith as in belief or belief, yeah. Faith in the terms of knowledge, knowing God. As much as you know that the ground underneath your feet is there. So you're not afraid to jump and land on the ground. You know the ground will hold you. You don't have faith that it will do that. You know that it will do that. Once you come to enter that bracket of faith, and as the scripture says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. So now you know you have entered a different tax bracket. You have entered a different club that is inaccessible to those who do not possess the quality that you have exercise yourself to the point of coming to have, which is this faith and knowledge type of faith, knowing type of faith. Imagine all the perks that you now are accessible to simply because you please God. You are pleasing him. What else could you possibly want apart from this? Because once you are in that tax bracket, anything you want is literally there. You just have to ask. And God will give you according to what he knows is best for you. And if you make a good enough case that what you're asking for is good for you, and you convince God enough, most likely he'll give it to you. Like Christ said in the parable about the prodigal son, the son that never left, right? The brother of the prodigal son, the one that never left. He told his father, Father, I've been with you always, and you've never made a big feast for me or a banquet for me. But yet this son that left and squandered his wealth on prostitutes, and now he's got nothing else left. And so he's coming back to you because he knows that's all he has is you. You make this big, grandiose feast for him. And then the father, basically God, in this illustration said, God basically said, but son, you've always been with me. Everything that I have is yours. Just ask. But this brother of yours, when he was gone, he was lost. He did not have access to all the perks that you've always have had access to. And whether you knew or not that you had access to these perks, really, that's your problem. You should have known that you have always had access to these perks. Just ask me. Just ask me. So you would enter a different tax bracket. You will basically become a millionaire or a billionaire or a trillionaire because you are pleasing to the Almighty. And so basically the Almighty will just say, what is it that you want? Ask me and I will give it to you. But according to his will, right? Yeah. Faith. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Since the Almighty literally answered my prayer in wanting to remember what I wanted to talk about, which was this topic, since he answered it within 2 minutes, and I was saying to myself as I was asking him, I was like, let me remember within like the next few moments before I arrive to the house. Like a thought, that I'm thinking like, let me remember because I know you hear me. And will you say yes? And if you say yes, well, why should I remember later on? Why not remember now? And the only reason why maybe I should remember later is because maybe you want me to talk about it later when I'm in the house, in the room, settled in a different environment. But if anything, let me remember now. And then 2 minutes later, I remembered. So basically, God approves this message. That yes, if you exercise your faith to the point where you know of his existence and you don't have a shred of doubt, you will be pleasing to him and you will enter a different bracket where these perks will be available to you. You just take advantage of them. But you have to meet that prerequisite first and keep his commandments, of course.